Hi, we have reignited the Birth of Us podcast with Michael Kelleher's and myself, Gila Nehemia. Um, we are really excited to come back, especially in this 1 year of 2026. And Michael and I were just talking about polarities and this kind of realignment. And we're just going to jump back in. So, if Michael, you might want to summarize a little bit about what we discussed, or just start a whole new topic is totally fine. I will follow along. I just want to share that I think we are coming into this new age together, and I think all of us are reassessing what it means to walk with all of ourselves, our whole selves, which I think has been a realignment in and of itself. And just one more thing, and just because I'm kind of responding to what you said earlier, Michael, um, I feel like these polarities that we've been walking through are now being shown to us in our daily lives, with all the extreme issues that are happening. And I think it's kind of this cleansing that I feel like you had said before, but I'll open that up for you to respond.
I certainly concur with what you're saying, that in many ways it's quite fascinating to review the basis on which we started this podcast. And even in its title, that the birthing of us, it heralded, or it in many ways was speaking to this dance that would lead us to more and more in tiny steps to remaining and to find a way to remain in a constant state of us with the individuality retained. So no longer really having these clear, firm boundaries of this perceived or illusionary individuality as something that is separated or abandoned by others, but to, in consciousness as much as in collective, cooperative creation, coming together, and to do that much more seamlessly. However, speaking of the polarity, that entails more and more the holding and working through the heavy swings, the pendulum going back and forth, in order to not just bring forth, to raise from the subconscious topics, themes, be it through soul family, be it through the heritage of the family line that we've birthed into in this incarnation, but it's the whole package of literally having all these bonds or think untied, no, loosened, untethered. There it is, untethered strings that are being worked into an interweaving and interlacing and resolution that goes hand in hand with the miraculous and fantastic option to do a bit of a life theme review, as if, not having to go through a lifetime and at the end of it, the conclusion of it, going through a review of all that we set out to do and how we had an impact on others through our actions, through everything that occurred, but to actually understand in the multidimensionality that we are, and in the parallel timelines or dimensions that we, the bigger we, occupies, that, or simultaneously occupies, that we have it in our hands through the daily occurrences. It's in each now moment, and that is not just speeding up in an extraordinary way, it's also filled with almost instantaneous manifestations. So one has to be quite present, aware, and one would have said careful in older days, but I think it's just the heart awareness that is taking really a firm grip on how we show up every now moment, and understand that that is not in any which way an extra tour of suffering and pain, while it may include that, because wherever there's density that we've hidden away, stored away, protected in our bodies, in our energy fields, it will create quite a bit of pain when it is the moment comes up or the time is ready to bring it forth, to feel it or go through it with our emotions. And I think that is ultimately the greatest tour de force, or the greatest achievement, is this embodiment of both the human self and the eternal aspect, as much as the eternal collective we. It's both. That this constant relaying or moving across, just a bit like a high wire act that really goes forward and backwards. We've become very adept at doing that more and more without even realizing to what extent, and have the opportunity through dreams, be it daydreams, or really losing ourselves in a very high vibratory dialogue with ourselves, with others, in order to look at common themes from different angles, which I think is really a beautiful way to anchor in this capacity that, yes, the Buddhists and others have called the middle way, which it is. And it also stands in a way for the new form of egregore, which is, for me, the divine that is being incorporated as a sacred element into anything that we think, feel, express, entertain, that how we breathe. It's no longer a push and pull, or more like being a swept, extremely, buffeted around is maybe a better word, by the ocean, the tsunami, any kind of wild element. And even that, elements as such are being overlaid, connected, interwoven. So fire, water, earth, air, and the resulting crystallization of the fifth, the reintroduction of our birthright, the connection to the element of ether as how we manifest and create going forward, how we become. The birthing of us is a birthing in an etherization of our blood, our bones, our everything, that ultimately, in some form or density, or in a play between structure and chaos, the void, the infinite silence, whatever you want to call it, but it's in the interplay of those that are co-birthing, or not even that, they become one. It's more like you become more the androgynous, I would say, it's not a mixture, it's an amalgam, it's a joining. Let's just call it a joining, because I don't think there's any visualization that really does it justice. It's not a soft eyes mix of dark and lighter, which is nice as a child. It's really, to me, it's the sheer and unfathomable potential to be both all light and all density at once. And it's just a matter of either flipping a switch in our DNA, physically speaking, or shifting our focus, or raising our vibration, or harmonizing, which is probably the biggest word, harmonizing these different streams within us, be it the masculine, feminine essence, the wild, untamed femininity, and the structured, more masculine part. But even those are just ways of approaching life. I would also say there's purity and impurity as something that really work hand in hand in order to hasten and speed up the possibilities of not just receiving. And at the moment, we're at a new phase of being literally overwhelmed. Our nervous systems are overwhelmed with the barrage of information, because that's what the CMEs and other seemingly natural occurrences in the physical or in the energetic way, the plasma waves, and so they bring us information. And if our vessel can expand ever wider to hold as much of that information for integration, And with integration, there is always a rest period or a period of like literally surrendering in totality, because you have to almost sink to your lowest in order for these processes to start working their way into every cell, into every aspect of who we are. And then the energy can build up to rise higher and have a moment of clarity to receive information that now, looking at it from a different angle, or maybe from many angles all at once, is just it's blinding in a certain way. It's so overwhelming that we don't know what to do with it yet. But as long as it is remaining with us in one form or another, we become it.
Well, so beautifully said. There's so much to unpack in that. And and for our listeners, I hope that you are, I know that you're thinking around the same lines, because or else you wouldn't be tuning into us. And I guess I love the fact that, just as you ended it, that's this blinding of all of this information, and both in the everyday elements of our lives, we are totally overwhelmed, but also just in the even in the silence of snow. We've had a lot of snow right here. And I had just been pondering it yesterday as I was looking at it. And I was like, it's so, there's form to the water, right? That's, at least that's how I think about it. The form and volume of water is suddenly like in front of me because it has, I'm not going to go through the scientific part because I don't really understand it, but I was just like, wow, like I probably would never, like when I was in Israel, I never saw the snow because there was no snow because it never got to freezing, right? It never went past, we would never go past the freezing point. So it's just kind of a wonder, but I guess I bring that up because there is a lot of I feel like there's a lot of information just in that, like it seems a little bit crazy to say that, but because we live with snow, people experience snow throughout their lives and they play in snow, whatever. But there's something about it that when there's an absence of it and then there's a present, you really appreciate that. And I think that that's kind of the place I'm specifically in, but a lot of us, once we are in going into that middle way or beginning that process, and I like the fact that I believe you had mentioned this kind of like all light and all density, like kind of coming together, and I think that that birthing of this kind of this new way of being, at least for some of us, is just like looking at the miracles that happen like on a daily level. We're like, oh, give us a miracle. Or sometimes I say to myself, but I'm like, every single living thing at this point in time, including my own body, is actually miraculous. We were even, just like a regular conversation at work, we were talking about the healing of food, and like, and that I never thought that that would happen, in my high tech office. But here it was. So I think that there are miracles that are currently happening, and I think it's just this recognizing, getting out of the head and totally recognizing the just the unimaginable aspects of the everyday. It's just that total kind of gratitude, acceptance, and almost like the words aren't coming to me, but just this like beauty that exists, in the sometimes evil, right? Clouded with that, shrouded in it sometimes. But as long as you are able to see it, even if it's just a sliver of your day, even if it's just yourself, that you're just like, wow, or your dog or whatever, like I feel like that in of itself is worth the breath we take on a regular basis.
It's beautifully put. And speaking of breath, that for me, as hard as it is still after all these years to completely accept, but within each second, many times we literally are birthed and we die. We're here and we're not here. And we are given these extraordinary, miraculous opportunities to have what we perceive or what we think we see on the outside is a reflection or an aspect of us, an aspect of the whole, which we can call God or we can call whatever, but it is that looking back at us and reflecting what has found a broader, a wider way through us, through cleared facets of our inner diamond to shine. It's an energy that we allow to blossom through our system, and yet we create it every split second. We create the whole, whatever is there, our world, our entourage, our surroundings. It is us, the people that reflect back that there has been and there is every now moment this rebirth, this new chance of a softening of the heart, a broadening, a widening of the heart. And as if things that seemed so heavy and, thick as molasses become light as a bird's song. They give hope. They will not ask of a complete how would I say that, losing yourself in it. It's not a distraction. It is crucial to hold all of it. One can put it easily with, colors. Colors are neutral. They're everything. We are heading towards a more neutral existence as we reintegrate the lost aspects of ourselves, which often are kind of the counter to what we feel comfortable in and what has been certainly pronounced as we were born into these bodies in this lifetime. But the other aspects of ourselves, they exist and they want to find a way home to make us fuller. I mean, everybody can, I'm sure, in one form or another, recall moments when the excitement of something, the newness in the now, especially as children, or so it was the first time that you perceived it. And that could be something that had to do with achievement, discovery, exploring, feeling yourself as the hero in your own story. However, there were also those moments when it was this, as you mentioned it before, the silence of watching the snowflakes come down. And you need that silence to hear all the voices. And so if you sit, similar to Snow White in the movie or in the story with all the animals or, other figures, that the animals come to us, the children are literally holding our eyesight, or how would I say it, the eye to eye level, and reflect back that there's a deep understanding that goes without words. In that now moment, we feel this vulnerable and extraordinary connection with the all that can be torn away seemingly at any now moment, but recreated or reborn as well. So this shift, or I would say it's like this, exploring, and sometimes we shifted more in one and a bit more in the other direction until, for whatever reasons, we settled more into maybe one expression or another. And there was always something missing. And that missing part, it is literally asking to be reunited, reintegrated. And that is part of this phase of coming to peace, I guess, with what is. That in itself, now, not what was yesterday or what would be tomorrow, completely irrelevant, because everything happens just now. And there is, everything can be looked at in such a playful way. When you talk about snow and the warmth and the warmth of the earth, let's say in the Middle East or wherever, in another part of the world, then you can say there's so much heat in most parts. There are mountaintops, which is the exact opposite, but there's so much heat that asks for purification, burning through something. And in other places, then what is invited and asked for is to reignite the fire within in order to deal with the seeming coldness or silence of the snow. So I think it's bringing back those two elements. And you have the privilege of having literally stepped from one experience into the other, one extreme into another, or one hot place, energetically speaking, not in a elemental way, to another one. I myself experienced literally going from one of these black holes, or siphoning, call it black cube or whatever it is that exists energetically in different parts of the world. And in an effortless way, we've managed to kind of hold against it just by being the more childlike aspect of ourselves, to understand that there can't just be more and more and more and more, or only success, or only wealth and power and all of that. But there is something else, again, a missing part that wants to be reunited, to be like the third aspect that needed to be pushed aside in order to make that extreme experience. And I think that is all now offered almost on a silver platter to all of us, to reallow that. And with that comes an instant, every moment call to responsibility and awareness, as everything that comes through us is manifested, is created. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. Sometimes the dog barks. So I mute myself. Thank you for that. I really appreciated that. And I wanted to just tag along on that word awareness. I just like, I was just thinking about this honestly in a kind of a deep way. I used to listen to Ram Dass, and he would talk about loving awareness. Like, just every moment is, you can view it or embody it in loving awareness. And I would say it to myself, and I would think about it, and I would just kind of be like, I would look at the sky. Whenever I look at the sky, I would really feel it. And then as I was kind of, continuing on this journey, and I was listening to Alan Watts, and, contemplating this thought, what does it mean to be in loving awareness? Like, to be just aware of everything, going back to our previous conversation of all this information, and it's like, and loving it regardless of, what was, what is, what will be, regardless of all of that. If we can continue that, even if it's just a few minutes of the day or whatever it is, time is kind of this existential thing. um it becomes, it not only becomes embodied, but you begin to perceive things in a different manner. And I if I say this because it's a challenge for me. It's something that I have to consciously think about until it becomes innate. But it's like an ongoing, it's an ongoing, like, not, I don't want to say habit, but it's an ongoing challenge that I'm continuing to work on. So I feel like it's just important to share, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is not in this ethereal space. It's like our actual life. And when we can embody that, when we can actually view it that way, nothing ever seems, nothing is dramatic. Like, we put drama to, of course, things happen, and, we have feelings, all of that. I'm not diminishing any of that. I'm just trying to say that, you know, it's never an all or nothing. And I know many people spiral, myself included, for certain things. But when we can catch ourselves and say, like, I am, even just like, I'm in loving awareness of this, and sometimes I do say that, um, we become the observer. We become like, we are in it and we are not in it. We can take any side. Like, all those perspectives that you mentioned can be blinding, but when you just kind of like realize all of that, again, it's kind of miraculous. Like, wow, this is all happening like all at the same time. Oh my goodness. And we don't have to necessarily try to control, because I feel like that's also been something that I know that I've been talking to my friends about, and it's like this ongoing, it's an ongoing issue, right? Interplaying in our real world life, this issue of control. But once we begin to release that, whether it's individually or collectively, however that plays out, I really feel like that that idea and that reality of loving awareness really begins to take hold, and we begin to surrender and allow, which I feel is this way that is opening up for all of us to truly be that potentiality that you had mentioned earlier.
Perfect. um, just yesterday, I had this vision, or the way to express, how it is for certainly those aspects of us and those who have come to rely a lot on structure and belief systems that are very dear to them, and have explored to a great extent all that can happen. I mean, created a vast and infinite array of different experiences that have been had to be, in so many ways, had to be fueled by a drive. I wouldn't call it a lust, but a drive for power, for control over certain things, and this like undying wish and belief in you know contributing and rising to the occasion, or to look at the Olympic movement is a good timely example of what it was founded upon, and maybe what it has become. Has it lost the essence of what some visions at the beginning were? No. So long story short, what that may be for a person like that is the pesky fly in reality as much as in energy that is not going away. That pesky fly that you can swat, that you can try to destroy, it's always there. That fly wants to remind you that there is a divine spark of pure love and a reconnection with the more absolute aspect, the middle ground that is available to you at any point. And more in the other kind of experience field of where it has been a constant story of reuniting or weaving, perfect for the way the feminine essence in ancient times, it had a symbolic value. The weaving, women were weaving cloth, but the weaving had symbolic expression, and to bring that together in times of war, in times of absolute, feeling completely devaluated also in your position in all of that. And so you actually visualize through the work what it is all about. And the opening there is a remembering of the joy of playfully and spirit in a spirited way, meaning with God or with the divine aspect, create and build. So the doing in a certain way can be reintegrated into the survival aspect of the being that survives, being tortured and destroyed over and over again. So it's really rapprochement of those aspects, which also speaks to as we allow a greater opening for the human aspect of us in its fullest vulnerability, because vulnerability is the basis on which the vessel can expand. It needs to be as wide open, and that goes counter intuition or counter instinct. Maybe that's a better word. The instinct wants to constrict in moments of near death or whatever, but to hold open your heart space when everything seems to fail is a practice that depending on which angle you take, obviously is different. Now, that human aspect is undergoing many changes, and with those changes, as Alan Watts speaks of it, all these vibrations and different expressions or different qualities, they gain in intensity. I would call it intensity. So we are invited to understand that as that is happening from a human perspective, you have the fiercest, the finest aspect of love, and a coarser, let's not call it cruder, but a coarser aspect of lust, which can be lust for life, lust for creativity, but it can also be a slightly distorted version of lust or a greater distorted version of lust. But they're housed or held within the same confinement of our vessel in so many ways as a human being. Now, in our other aspect of the observer, the neutral observer, the eternal self that is also the oversoul and ultimately the all, uh, this interplay between like witnessing and having the empathetic, the higher sensitivity of the individual responding to both your own reactions and the reactions around you. So, as human beings, we're invited to witness processes of individuals, other aspects of ourselves that are going through, severe hardship and a lot of pain, a lot of releasing of pain, I should probably say. And for the more sensitive, that becomes an extremely difficult thing because we feel it as we witness it, and we are learning not to intervene or even wish to do this or that, and at the same time be aware that we're just as fragile and as much in this process of learning and integrating as anybody else that we perceive. So the game, as it becomes more complex and more beautiful at the same time, is to really see that there's so much happening at different stages in different levels of um, process and growth that are all aspects of ourselves. And so the surrender of the heart is really the respect. I think, the respect and the acceptance that this is there in a neutral way. To go beyond that may not even be called for because sometimes that's the most difficult, especially with loved ones and people that are both the hardest, the greatest nemesis and the dearest or part of us wants us to, for us to have that connection of the eternal child and adult, for example, a parent. And we are learning that as we become it ourselves, it's much more complex and at the same time more beautiful because it allows for all these, it's like a pas de deux, it's this collective or this joint dance where while we step on the other's feet and vice versa, we grow. We grow to understand it better and to let go of this separateness that is seemingly so there and to experiment in a oneness. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Well, we're going to end on that amazingly beautiful thought and contemplative space that you brought us into, Michael. So thank you so much. Thank you, all of us, for listening. And we hope to come back again. This is going to be a monthly podcast, I believe, unless we decide to do it again on a biweekly basis, but we'll see how that goes. We invite you to share your thoughts with us, and we'll see how this evolves when we come together. And perhaps we might, create a blog in at some point, but that we both, write into, or maybe have other members come in and share. But I'm really glad we restarted this, Michael. I really feel connected, and it's almost like we haven't spoken in a long time, Michael and I. But when we get together, it all comes out so
Mark's
beautifully.
flying.
Yes, I do. So thank you again, Michael, and thank you for all of you who are here and present with us today. And if there are any topics you'd like us to talk about in general, please let us know. But we kind of just go with the flow, and whatever comes to us at that moment, we share. So, are there any closing thoughts you'd like to share, Mike? We have like literally 5 minutes.
It's a beautiful and extremely challenging period that we're going through. And it's so much held in the now moment that we're gently inviting ourselves, let's put it that way, to understand that something that cuts very deep and seems very sharp. The antidote to that is often, approaching it from the opposite angle or to complement it with something. Should any energies, the internet, certain media, or other things become destabilizing, I can feel them in my space. It really feels very ungrounded and untethered. And I, in a humble way, accept and, withdraw, but learn to find joy again in simple things like, you know, writing with a fountain pen in ink, or responding to the pain in others. That can be a simple thing, losing of a pet. So I sit down and poetry flows through me. And I think that's, something that looking forward may be a possibility more and more, that we contribute to whatever is most on our collective greater we mind or hearts, I would say, that we bring that together and actually express it because we can. And because that puts such a strong note out there. We're working our way back to the joint song that we have been at the initial stages when individuations of the whole broke off, and that pure song or pure note of the individual expression and path has gone through a lot of distortions and a lot of murkiness and heaviness that has taken it away from its clarity. And we've discovered, each one of us, by remembering, waking up, whatever it is, that we want to reconnect with that song. And that is our contribution to the whole, the purest version of that song. It's a vibration that changes everything. And yet it wants to connect in a symphony or a multiple dimensional, multiple octave symphony with other songs that are all in harmony, something greater. That's the way back home in another expression. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We are literally almost out of time. So thank you so much for that beautiful visualization of this harmonic song. It brought back a lot of stuff for me, but I'm not going to share it right now. We'll wait for our next time because we don't have time. So thanks, everyone. And until next time, much love.